Well, Sir John Key has got another gong, this time from Australia. The former Prime Minister was invested as an Honorary Companion in the Order of Australia at a ceremony in Canberra this afternoon. The Australian Prime Minister, Malcolm Turnbull, says Sir John was deeply committed to advancing the two countries' bilateral relationships and pursuing common interests around the world. I asked Sir John how he heard he was going to receive Australia's highest honour.
Well, Malcolm Turnbull rang me and said that the Australian government had decided to bestow the honour on me. So that happened some months ago, and obviously I was somewhat stunned and shocked, but also really thrilled. But you know, I see it very much as a reflection on the relationship between New Zealand and Australia, and slightly less at a personal level. I think it just demonstrates that we are the best of friends, and you know, that we see leaders across, you know, the ditch on each side as playing an important role collectively to make Australasia, you know, a stronger set of nations in the world.
I guess they don't always treat us like best friends, though, Mr. Key. There's been some criticism of the way that New Zealanders are treated. They don't, in Australia, it's hard for them to get citizenship. They can't always get benefits. Many of them are on in detention centres. You know, what would you say to that?
Yeah, I mean, I think what I'd say firstly is if you look at the positives of the relationship, there's huge amounts of things we do together. I mean, we still have, you know, open labour markets where, you know, you're free to travel across the Tasman. I mean, you're right, of course, that not everyone can be accepted as an Australian citizen, but we are one sort of joint economy in a lot of ways, and CER delivered that. We've worked together in places like Taji training forces in Iraq. We've worked together very closely, for instance, on TPP. And we looked for regional solutions around the boat people issue. So there's lots and lots of areas where we work very closely together, and from the sports field to the battlefield. I think most New Zealanders would recognise and respect the Anzac spirit that's still very much alive. But that doesn't mean within that there can't be these challenging issues. I think at the time when Helen Clark made the call that she would accept that there would be some New Zealanders that wouldn't be granted citizenship in Australia, she did it because she was trying to preserve that free, open labour market, and it was a trade-off that she probably didn't want to make, but nevertheless she made it. And I think we have worked hard to get some improvements there. In my time as PM, we got some movement, but no one would argue it's perfect.
You know, and obviously there is a special relationship, and there are a lot of things that have been achieved bilaterally, but I guess are you disappointed that in your Prime Ministership you couldn't do more for New Zealanders that are living in Australia and the rights that they want?
We worked really hard for them. I mean, what we didn't want to see was the same thing that Helen Clark as Prime Minister didn't want to see, which is a closing of that window of opportunity for Kiwis to go across the Tasman if they choose to. Now, in my time, actually, you know, increasingly smaller numbers chose to go. In fact, lots of Aussies came and lived in New Zealand, and that reflected the strength of the economy on this side of the Tasman. But you know, I think we did make some gains, and certainly in that last year, you know, Malcolm Turnbull made some significant progress to allowing some people who'd been in Australia for a long time to become citizens. I mean, it's worth remembering that the bulk of, you know, nearly 500,000 Kiwis who live in Australia, I think a great many of them are eligible to be Australian citizens, but unfortunately, you know, that was the decision made back in the early 2000s that Australia would close the window for allowing everyone to be in that category.
That pathway to citizenship agreement that you're talking about there from last year, there has been some suggestion in the last month or two that could be eroded by changes that Peter Dutton, the Immigration Minister there, is making. Are you disappointed by the fact that that's perhaps not as strong as it was when you left office?
Well, obviously what I would like to see, you know, I'm not in a position where I can influence that anymore, but what I would like to see as a, you know, kind of interested observer, I suppose, these days, is that New Zealanders enjoy the maximum rights that they can in Australia. And I think the case that we put up at the time to the Australian government about the fact that these are people that have lived, you know, often, you know, a huge bulk of their life in Australia. They've paid taxes in Australia. They've worked hard. They've been good citizens. They've made a tremendous contribution. And them and their children are, in every sense of the word, I think, pretty fine Australians. And just because they don't necessarily meet the criteria in terms of the labour market test that Australia had, personally, I thought that Australia was missing out by not having them. But So, I think it is an issue that they will continue to need to look at. And I think it's a long-term, not a sustainable position that the Australians have got. But in the end, progress is sometimes made slowly, and you eat an elephant bite by bite. And I think we're getting some progress and some gains, but we're certainly not at the finishing line.
Do you think now that you've got this highest honour that Australia can give that you might be able to pull some strings?
One would argue I was probably more influential when I was in office, but nevertheless, we continue to have those discussions. We had drinks with Malcolm Turnbull last night, and he's coming to the ceremony today. And I just took the opportunity to reaffirm to him how important that issue is and how much it plays in New Zealand. And I think sometimes it's easy to look at the negatives and the difficult parts of any relationship, because the greatest friends in the world will from time to time have areas where they don't see eye to eye. But I think from New Zealand's point of view, and I think it's true on this side of the Tasman as well in Australia, but certainly from New Zealand's point of view, our greatest friend is Australia. And, we live in a world, I think, where we see those two countries, outside of when we're competing on the sports field together these days, very much working in tandem and in unison. We might have a slightly different perspective, a slightly different take on an issue, but we agree far more often than we disagree, and we see a lot of each other at forums like APEC or the East Asian Summit or the Pacific Island Forum. We're both very big contributors to aid and development in the Pacific, for instance. Areas like trade, we've been closely aligned. So, I don't think we should sort of have complete doom and despair. I think there's an enormous amount of strength and goodwill in that relationship, but from time to time, issues like migration can be quite hot issues, and unfortunately at the moment it is in Australia.
And, there is a great official friendship between New Zealand and Australia, but did that personal friendship between you and Mr Turnbull perhaps play a part in this honour?
I suspect so. I didn't. When you receive these things and you're awarded them, you don't go into a sort of forensics of examination of why it happened. I think you just you're grateful and you accept it in the spirit that it was given. But there's been certainly no secret that Malcolm and I have been good friends, and we've worked together for the benefit of both countries. I do very much see it as a sort of country award. I've asked, because I can invite guests today, I've asked the current Minister of Foreign Affairs, Jerry Brownlee, to be here, and the Minister of Foreign Affairs, who was with me the whole time that I was PM, Murray McCulley, to attend, because I think that reflects the fact that this is very much it is an Australian to New Zealand sort of award, if you like. And while it's lovely that I'm the person that gets that honour, I think you have to just sit back and say, look, there are an enormous number of people that allow the relationship to be at that level, and I was just one of those individuals.
Well, thanks very much, Mr Key, and congratulations.
Thank you very much indeed.
And that's Sir John Key speaking to us from Australia.